Hey there, this is Jay from Filmstrip dropping in to let you know you're about to hear a classic episode from our archives. Some of these shows were produced before we called the show Filmstrip Podcast, before we used popcorn ratings, had the standard intro song from Frozen Lake 121, or really even knew what we were doing recording and editing the show. However, there's a lot of fun in them, and we hope you enjoy. Just wanted to let you know in case you noticed the differences. Now, on to the show.
Welcome to Continuous Play's Harry Potter series retrospective. We will be reviewing each of the Harry Potter films this fall up until the release of the first part of the series finale, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. These reviews will be spoiler-filled, so if you haven't seen the movies, watch them before listening to our podcast. Continuous Play Podcast is not affiliated with Heyday Films, 1492 Pictures, Duncan Henderson Productions, or Warner Brothers Pictures, and any discussion of these films, the characters, music, or parties involved is done so for entertainment purposes only, and no infringement is intended. Now, Anna and Jay, raise your wands and let's get to the podcast.
Welcome to Filmstrip's Harry Potter retrospective series. I'm Jay.
I'm Anna.
And we're here to talk about Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, the sixth film in our series, released in 2009, directed again by David Yates, and adapted for the screen by Steve Kloves. Stars the same group of people that have been all of them. It's the sixth entry. It's one of the biggest ones in the Harry Potter series. In terms of release, it's actually second in domestic gross, with over 300 million coming in, and of course worldwide, it did almost 933 million. This is a mega film. It just had a great run at the box office, Anna, and really set everything up for where we are now with the Harry Potter series as it's coming to a close. It's I guess you'd say the beginning of the closing trilogy.
Yeah, I guess you could say it's the closing trilogy because it's the next to last one, but they did the last one in two. So, yeah, I guess you could say that.
The long book, though, right? As I understand.
Yeah, it was a long book.
Yeah, it's quite a big one, but they had to chunk it up in ways to get it on screen. But widely regarded in critical circles as a really good one. In fact, J.K. Rowling says, I haven't seen what her comments have been about the last two, but at the point of this one's release, she said this was her favorite adaptation of all six films, which I thought was pretty high praise.
I think what they finally accomplished, it took them 6 movies to do it, but what they finally accomplished with this is they got every theme in her book. Like we talked about in the third and fourth one, there were plot points they took out of the book because the books were so long or they're so drawn out. She goes into a lot of detail. But this one, I thought between reading the book and this, and the movie, that they struck a good balance. Like they hit all the themes she hit in her book, but they took them exactly as far as they needed to. And one of the things which we'll talk about later is the whole Harry and Ginny thing.
I will say this too. I complained in the fourth one that it felt like there was so much going on and they just did little vignettes of everything, kind of hit it all. Well, I felt the same about this. There's a lot going on in it, but I think it was better produced. It just seemed like a better adaptation. And having not read the books, that's sort of hard for me to say, but it didn't feel as truncated or as in a hurry to get through as much stuff, if that makes sense. It felt like they were trying to do a lot with this story and that there was a lot to accomplish, but everything got its due and got its time. And really in this one too, our central 3 characters, it really got back to just being about them ultimately and the way they do things. And I kind of hope that's something they stick with throughout the rest of the series. Is you've got all these other things going off on the side, but ultimately this has got to be about Harry, Hermione, and Ron. And I felt like this was the best story of the 3 of them together that we'd had maybe since the third one.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you on that, Jay.
Well, Anna, before we get any deeper into this thing, will you please dazzle us with another one of your magical plot summaries?
I will try. Harry, Ron, and Hermione are beginning their 6th year at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and Voldemort's power has grown really great. No one can be trusted. At the beginning, we are led to believe due to Professor Snape promising to protect Draco Malfoy and entering into an unbreakable vow with Mrs. Malfoy, and an observance by Harry and his friends at Diagon Alley that Draco had been ordered by Lord Voldemort to kill or harm Dumbledore in some way. We also learn there's a new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. Surprise. Well, not really a surprise. It's Professor Snape, who I believe in one of the first movies we learned has been coveting that position for a while. So the vacant position this year is actually potions. And so Dumbledore recruits Harry to try to recruit Professor Slughorn, who apparently was at Hogwarts a long time ago. Harry quickly realizes, and later Dumbledore confirms, that Professor Slughorn likes to collect students. And I believe even Dumbledore goes so far as to tell Harry, let him collect you, because Dumbledore wants a memory that Slughorn has. And due to an old book Harry just happened to receive with some awesome handwritten notes, Harry becomes Slughorn's star student. And in the Teenage Angst department, Ron somehow obtains a girlfriend, but surprise, she is kind of crazy, which in turn drives Hermione nutty because she really loves Ron but is too stubborn to tell him. In the meantime, Harry is pining for the red-headed hottie, Ginny Weasley, and everything works out in the end. Ron and Hermione end up together, and Ginny and Harry end up together. So, in the end, Harry obtains the memory from Slughorn, and Dumbledore learns that Voldemort has sliced his soul into 7 separate pieces called Horcruxes. One was Tom Riddle's diary from the second movie, and there are 6 more. Dumbledore and Harry go on a quest to find one of Voldemort's Horcruxes, which happened to be a locket, but it wasn't there. When they return, there is a showdown between the Death Eaters and Dumbledore, and Professor Snape does the unthinkable when Dumbledore says, "Severus, please," and he kills Dumbledore, and Dumbledore dies at the end of the movie.
Dun dun dun. What a downer too, man. Wow. I mean, there's Obi-Wan Kenobi sacrificing himself several chapters later than normal, but yeah, I mean that had been the hot rumor was, Dumbledore eventually is going to get it. I mean, everybody talked about that, and I'll tell you, I think you could see that coming too, right? Like, that had to ultimately happen. There was going to be this major thing that sent everybody finally over the edge in this battle. And, of course, it has to be the person you and I have been fingering is there's something not right with him from the beginning, Snape, who does it. I mean, it's always, that guy.
It always is. Yes, that's true. But what kills me is when this happens is that she, throughout the movies and the whole series, and the movies say this too, is that Snape gets exonerated. He's always like, they thought he was the one in the first book. They thought it was him, but it was really Quirrell. Yeah. And, he always gets exonerated. And, I think in the 5th, in the Order of the Phoenix, the Sirius and Mad-Eye don't really trust Snape, but Dumbledore's like, no, he's okay. But he always seems to get exonerated. And it's just, to me, it's actually more shocking that he did it, because he's always getting exonerated either by his own actions or Dumbledore believes him, and then the book ends like this, that he actually did it. So I actually find that a little more shocking and a little different than, but I guess everybody just kind of assumes where there's smoke, there's fire.
Well, I would. I mean, as someone, again, who didn't read the books, is just following this as a movie series, you saw the setup coming. It was either going to be him, or I really thought the Malfoy kid was actually going to get to do this. And you read the book. When you read the book, was it as big a shock as it was for like me when I watched it? Because this is the first time I've seen this one, and I watched it and I was like, wow. I kind of expected him to go there, but then again, I didn't expect him to go there, because like you said, they always let Snape off the hook.
Yeah, I was shocked. I was shocked that he would do that. But as I'm reading the book, and with the movie too, with this series, whether you read the books or see the movies or both, nothing is ever as it seems.
No.
So I kept thinking after I read the book, of course it's at the end of the book, and I had months months before the next book came out, years or months before the next book came out to think about it, but is what are we missing? There is something there that we're missing. That's what I thought when it happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a big turn, but it is one of the most satisfying, dramatic conclusions in these different chapters. If you look at these movies as chapters of this story of Harry Potter, a lot of times they just leave you hanging, particularly the last two. Goblet of Fire and Order of the Phoenix really left you hanging. And not to say that this one doesn't, but I had satisfaction with the conclusion. I felt like everything that had happened in the movie led up to this, and now I'm ready for the next chapter, as opposed to all this stuff happened and it'll matter in 5 years. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I was satisfied with it, much more so than I have been really since Prisoner of Azkaban.
And I know, and if you notice from the plot summary that I did, I'm constantly going back to different movies, like the Tom Riddle's Diary and the Chamber of Secrets and stuff like that. So this is where this to me is what the fans expected the fifth movie to be. This is where Voldemort's power's gotten stronger, and it's going to get stronger, and he has killed Dumbledore. Dumbledore has died. Something has happened. All this stuff we've referenced, all the movies and the references from the past movies, books, whatever you want to call it. And here we are. This is the first time I think it has kind of accumulated into one big ball, and we're moving forward.
Well, it's time for the showdown.
Right. Instead of getting piece here, piece here,
Yeah.
piece here, piece here.
And you said in the last podcast, you got to start really paying attention to stuff, because there's so much in 5 that is brought back up and paid off in 6. And you were right about that. The Tom Riddle thing, I had forgotten about that. I had to go, stop and go and Google who is that? What is the diary? And go, oh yeah, Chamber of Secrets, because I had forgotten that. I had moved on from that, and I thought, you know what, though? If you're a fan of these books, you keep up with these little nuggets, this is where it starts all paying off. And
yes,
in that respect, I like the payoffs that are coming, because there's so many of them. They can stretch them out over 3 films. And this was a big one for me, though, because, again, I was not a fan of the Goblet of Fire. I didn't like it at all. I think I said I would never watch it again, and I pretty much hold to that. I don't know that I will, and I don't know that I'll ever watch Order of Phoenix again. But this is one I could go back to, possibly. I mean, there's things here I'm not real crazy about, but I like the ending of this, and I like that it all culminated. I mentioned him before. We need to talk about Draco Malfoy, played by Tom Felton. Played the same kid that, all these kids have played all these parts all these years. And I felt like he hasn't had anything to do, really, since the Prisoner of Azkaban story. And I don't know if that's how it is in the books. He just seems to sort of always be on the side and he's Harry's rival. You just know that going in. That's how it's going to be. And they give him so much in this story. And I got to say, kid really handled it well. I mean, Tom Felton really played Malfoy with layers that you normally don't get in your bad guy for the story. You would think that a guy like Malfoy would jump on something like this and just be gung-ho for evil, but he's really conflicted about it, to the point that he cannot carry out the assignment when it finally is in front of him. And it just tears him up. And, I mean, Harry Potter unleashes hell on him, too, for it.
First off, I'll go back. And in the books, Draco has a little more to do, but it's not anything substantial. I mean, he's still kind of just that kind of pain in Harry's butt all the time, and he's the anti-Harry. I think we've established that. He's the rich kid from a good family, and his parents, not that Harry isn't rich, but he's the pure blood, and his parents were Death Eaters, and Harry's parents are in the Order of the Phoenix. And I think because Harry's parents left him a lot of money, we learn in the first movie. So I think they were both kind of rich, but it's just he's the anti-Harry in every way, shape, and form. But I also think that they're kind of setting the Malfoys up. I kind of feel like we get, and in that regards, he did a really good job. I think we get disillusioned with them the more we see them, and if you think back. We kind of get disillusioned with them. If you think back to the first time, we met Draco in the first book, but if you remember back to the Chamber of Secrets where we meet Lucius,
yeah,
he's rich and presents himself that way and presents himself very powerful and evil and stuff. And then I just think we're getting disillusioned with the Malfoys, or the you know what I mean? The audience is getting disillusioned with the Malfoys. So maybe now that Voldemort's really in power, they're not as cocky as maybe they were before, or they're not as confident or sure of themselves as they were before.
Well, obviously they've had a shadow cast on them this whole series, right? And we don't know their intentions, and now it looks like that their intentions are coming clear, and it is as bad as we assumed. And in fact, it could be much worse. And you're starting to feel like this whole thing is, and I'm going back to my Star Wars metaphor here, it's more than just Voldemort versus Harry Potter, or Voldemort even versus the Potters. It's the Death Eaters versus the Order of the Phoenix.
Yes.
Is that right? Because that's how I'm reading this, and it's like the Empire versus the Rebellion. We feel like there's those two sides, and as this story reveals itself more, you start to realize this is the story of Harry Potter in the midst of this war that has gone on for decades between these two factions of magic.
Well, I don't know. Hold on. Let me take that back. I don't know if I'd agree with that so much. I agree that there are two factions, but one can't live without the other. Voldemort can't live if Harry's alive, and Harry can't live if Voldemort's alive. So one of them has to die, and one of them has to win. So one of them has to die, and one of them has to live. So one faction is going to be in power no matter what.
Well, yeah, and see, again, with my Star Wars metaphor, we got to bring balance to the Force, ultimately. How that's done is in ways that maybe we don't expect or that we assume, but I'm not saying she's ripping it off. I'm just saying there's a parallel there that, again, as somebody who didn't read the books, is just watching the movies, you're starting to see who the sides really are. Like, it's always been a little muddled for me as to who's really against who here? Is it the Ministry? Is it this? And you realize it's really the Death Eaters versus the Order of the Phoenix, isn't it?
Yes.
And sort of like it's like your opinion on how the magic world should run, right?
This is how I see it. There will never be a balance or a harmony. There is one or the other. I don't know if that goes with the Star Wars metaphor with restoring Force, because I'm not good with Star Wars.
Well, no, you're right, and that's where it differs. And you brought that up again, is that Voldemort can't exist forever if Harry exists, and vice versa. So ultimately, it's going to be one taking over the other, but those clearly are our sides. And this movie, better than I think any of the rest of them so far, have really made that clear to the audience.
I don't know. Every time I see Tom Felton in every movie, he just amazes me, either by just how drastically he grows or how he looks or something. I remember in the third movie, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that's him. And so he just always amazes me, and I'm glad to see a little more depth to the character finally in the movies, and in any aspect. I'm glad to see more depth to the character, and I think he did a great job. And I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less. He's been playing the character as long as Harry has. As long as Daniel Radcliffe has. He just hasn't had as much screen time, so I wouldn't expect anything less.
Well, the thing, and confession time here, I actually had to look it up to see that it was still him, because I'm like you. I'm like, that kid looks way too big. He doesn't look like a kid anymore. He looks like an adult. There's no way that's the same person. They just got somebody that's similar, and nope, sure enough, the same guy.
I don't know if it's him and the way he's grown, or if it's the costuming and the makeup and the hair, but he just, after like the second movie, he just looks total. From the third movie on, every movie he looks different.
Granted, they're having to cake it on Daniel Radcliffe and Rupert Grint to hide their 5 o'clock shadows at this point, because I mean, if you see those people away from this, they look like young adults. They don't look like 16, 17-year-old kids anymore. They really don't. Even though none of them are really big, they don't look their age anymore. They've actually gotten older than the part now, but they are still able to keep them in that way through costuming. But you're right, Tom Felton looks older, and he looks more menacing. I'll say that his whole costuming, he went from looking like a little toady bully early on to now he looks like somebody that could really kick your teeth in if you crossed him the wrong way. He's not just talk. And that's the thing I think I like about the Draco Malfoy character is he's not just talk. I mean, he can actually do something, and he's someone who is conflicted by his own. If Harry's conflicted at all about who he is and what his mission in life is, Draco is too. By circumstances he can't control, he is tasked to do something that something in him knows is wrong. And it's what stops him from doing it. And that was fascinating to me. I'm only hoping that's explored even further as we go into the 7th film and the 8th film ultimately, because that was such a neat turn of character. Because if anybody was going to do bad just for bad's sake when he finally got the chance, it would have been Draco Malfoy, in my opinion. And then he's not able to do it.
Well, I still think that I take a different thing. He is more menacing in this movie. I agree with you. His performance, and he's more, I don't want to say sullen. Like you say, conflicted, menacing. I get that. But to me, I disagree with you. I think he's the bully, and he's been the bully for basically 5 movies. He's been the bully. He's been harassing Harry and Ron and Hermione. Hermione with her mudblood, and Ron with being poor, and Harry with just being Harry, and being the chosen one, I guess. But I think that in my opinion, Voldemort charged him with this mission. Probably to me to kind of shut him up and quit being so menacing and being such a bully and actually back up what he's talking about with actions. That's my opinion on it.
I just took it as he took Harry's rival and used him. Voldemort's all about Voldemort, right? So I don't think he's got any care for any of these other people at all. These are just his minions. So you go do it since you seem to hate him anyway. Take care of Dumbledore for me. One, because he knows that'll really tick Harry Potter off and distract him. And by all means it does. Because, even though the Draco can't go through with it, it doesn't stop Harry from really unleashing hell on him.
But I still think Voldemort is setting the Malfoys up for something.
Yeah, you just don't know what. That's the thing.
You don't know. I don't know what, but it's not good.
In every bad guy plan, there's always somebody left holding the bag. That's and it's usually your closest ally. Those are the people you turn on, and that's exactly what I think is happening. He's just gonna when and if Voldemort rises to power and takes over, you kill those people because they were right there with you. So why have loose ends? They would be the only ones that's powerful enough to do anything about it. Because by the time you get to that point, everybody else is gone, right? I mean, that's what you would have to assume. So he'd just take them out too. I just think he's using them.
True. With that theory, though, kind of, sort of, I wonder if he is upset because if we think about all his followers, like the rat-looking guy, Peter Pettigrew, and Beatrix, Helena Bonham Carter, if you look at his followers, they were like in Azkaban, or they were in some kind of hiding or something, like the rat being, Peter Pettigrew being the Weasley's rat. But this whole time, the Malfoys have been out there in the open and in the ministry and stuff, and I'm wondering if he resents them for that or something.
I don't know so much that, because think about it, where all those other people are. It's a strategic position. You have Pettigrew in with the Weasleys because the Weasleys are part of the Order of the Phoenix,
right?
And plus Ron Weasley's Harry Potter's age, so there's your eyes and ears there. You have Beatrix Lestrange in Azkaban because who's she keeping an eye on? Sirius Black.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the Malfoys in the Ministry of Magic because that's their place, their magic royalty, if you will, right? So that would be a good place to have it. These are allies who are plants for a reason, and they're supposed to be in there, which brings me to another point. All right? Okay. Snape. And Snape's turn to the dark side, if you will. I'm besides the fact that he was the one that pulled the trigger on Dumbledore, metaphorically, to see him, I'm watching this and I have to just give a lot to Alan Rickman, who could probably just sell me that he could be the Easter Bunny because he's just such a good actor. He can just become these things. I've watched him defy me, this idea that he is not evil, that he's just dark, for 5 movies now. And then in this 6th one, I'm like, you son of a gun, you really are on their side. Or are you? What is the deal? And it's the ambiguity of Snape is fascinating to me.
Oh, I agree. And it's even more fascinating in the books. I'll say that. It's even more fascinating because they don't go into, I don't think they go into in the movies. They mention it a lot in the 4th book, but he was a Death Eater.
Right. They mentioned that a few times.
And I think they might have mentioned it in the things, but they go into more detail in the books about that. And I thought they mentioned it in the 4th and 5th movie, but I wasn't 100% sure. Or they mentioned it so briefly, I wasn't 100% sure. But he's, and especially from like the 5th book on, 5th and 6th books, he's working as this double agent. He does at the beginning of the movie when he does the unbreakable vow and stuff to protect Draco. And I mean, it's just, he is such an intriguing character. He is. And he's one of the most intriguing. To me, he's one of the most intriguing characters she's written in the whole movie series. And I love Alan Rickman. I love his voice. I love him as Snape. I loved him in Love Actually. I love him. I mean, he's the bad guy from Die Hard. Come on.
He's the best one that series ever had by far. He was the sheriff of Nottingham in the Kevin Costner Robin Hood. I mean, you're right. He's always playing the bad guy, at least in some way. Not all the time, but a lot of times he plays the bad guy. And I think it takes a certain chameleon-like quality to be able to pull that off. We talked about that with Gary Oldman when we did the Prisoner of Azkaban review, that's why he always seems to play those guys. So Snape to play somebody that's on the fence, or Rickman to play somebody that's on the fence, like Snape seems to be or is a perfect choice. And I much like Malfoy and Tom Felton, I was glad they gave Rickman and Snape some real heavy stuff to do.
I agree too, especially after watching the last 2 movies, the 4th and the 5th movie.
Oh yeah.
He did nothing. He had really nothing to do but stand there, and he really didn't have a lot to do in the 2nd movie either. He didn't have a whole lot to do. So I'm glad they finally brought that character full circle.
Yeah, I mean, it gave them so much to do, and it was.
Well, it's kind of 3/4 of a circle. We still have 2 more movies to go.
Yeah, he's still got a ways to go, but I'm now into Snape again, and I remember what I liked about him early on, and why I'm glad he's a part of this. Let's talk about our 3 central people, though. I mean, we really got to talk about Harry, Ron, and Hermione, and you mentioned it in your plot summary. That was a great way to summarize it. The whole love triangle bit gets thrown around again, and Ron, stumbles into a girlfriend because he's actually got athletic prowess, which was sort of a shock to everyone involved, including me, and because he's kind of the shimp of the gang, but he comes up looking pretty good in this one, and of course that breaks little Hermione's heart. And you feel so bad for the poor girl, because he's so dense. There's no way he'd get it. But I like the playoff between the 3 of them. And there was a lot of them sitting around working through stuff together again. I really just liked I said it, before, that since the 3rd one, this is the best one of the 3 of them just doing stuff together. And I just loved it. I like the direction of that. I hope it lasts, because that's so much more interesting than when you have them all doing side adventures, even though they do split up a little bit. But
I will, and I know, but this might be a spoiler alert, but in the 7th movie, there's nothing else for them to do but hang out together. So you'll get your wish.
See, that to me, well, I got that going in because they've decided to go on the hunt at the end of this movie. And I'm like, yes, we're going to have the trio go out and do the damage now. I'm all about it. I like that. But I think you had to have one final miniature fracture for a minute to let them get over the hump of it. Because this is the establishment of some serious relationships, right? Finally Ron and Hermione will own up to the way they feel about each other, to each other, which is, nice to see. And you get Harry and his, crush to be or whatever. All I can say about Ginny Weasley is at least she's not insane.
Yeah, she's pretty sane.
Yeah.
But I think back, because I'm a huge Friends fan, I think back to an episode of Friends when Ross goes out with Janice. And he comes clean to Chandler, and he's like, I don't care if you go out with Janice. I can't stand her. And Ross is like, well, we're best friends, and you don't date each other's ex-girlfriends or their sisters or their cousins.
Yeah.
And Chandler's like, wait, I am mad at you when he and Monica are secretly dating. I always go, when I read the book and when I did this, I went back to that. And I was just like, really, Harry, out of all the girls and in Great Britain and Hogwarts and everywhere, you had to pick your best friend's sister.
But it makes sense. It's the family he spent the most time around. He's the closest to them. She's had a crush on him from way back, and now she proves to be useful. I mean, it's her and him who go hide they go and hide the potions book, and that's where they kiss and all that stuff. I mean, it makes total sense that they would wind up together. And I thought it was cute. I mean, again,
I'm glad they wind up. I'm glad they wind up together, but it's like his life is so difficult as it is. It's so complicated and so difficult as it is. It's that he goes and adds dating his best friend's sister.
It's still better dynamics than Dawson's Creek. I'll just say that again.
True.
Like I said in the last podcast. It's just still, at least there's, and people that listen to the Art of Slaying, the Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast will know this. At least there's no eternal punishment for relationships that end in happiness. Because the rule on Buffy is if you're ever in a happy relationship, somebody's about to die or y'all are about to really become mortal enemies. That always happens, in the Buffy relationship. So at least here you feel like, we finally coupled people up, and that seems to be taken care of. And again, I felt like there was so much conclusion to little things that had been hanging on for 2, 3, 4 episodes, maybe even longer, that to where by the end of it, when Dumbledore dies and these three decide we're going after the other Horcruxes, that they're riding off on the Wyatt Earp ride. Now it is time we got taken care of all this other stuff. Now we're gonna go on the ride. I liked it. I mean, I was with these three more through this story than the last 2 movies that I've seen of them together. I just liked the whole spin of them together and the way they had to work together to get it done again. It harkened back to that first movie. When they're down there playing the live game of chess and all that stuff. I mean, I really felt like I was in that. I really felt like we were back to that type of arena, and it was so refreshing. I just really liked it. It was a good story.
I do too. And looking back on the movies, did you think that Harry would wind up with? Did you see that coming, Harry and Ginny?
I don't know that I saw it coming so much. You just could tell she liked him, and they kept popping her back into the story here and there. Mm-hmm. And I think it's either the 4th or the 5th one. I can't remember now, but it was the 5th one, I guess, because the Order of the Phoenix is at the Weasley's place, right? And they're all sitting around talking, and she's there, and you can tell something's going on there. I knew he was never going to wind up with the cute girl that he had the crush on that turned out to be insane. That one.
Cho Chang.
Yeah, and he wasn't going to wind up with Hermione, clearly. And so it makes sense that he gets together with Ginny Weasley. Like, I'm fine with that.
I was just curious. Like, did you did you see? Because I don't. Be honest, no matter what, like I say, no matter what you saw or read, you knew Ron and Hermione were going to end up together.
Well, yeah, that was clearly, anytime you got that people that are that antagonistic to each other early on that are still friends.
That's been obvious since like the second movie.
Yeah, clearly. Did I see it coming? No, I'll honest, I didn't see him and Ginny Weasley getting together, but clearly I knew she was going to have some major role in some of this. And all the Weasleys were, because as these stories have unfolded, they've become much more a part of everything, because they're everything that the Dursleys aren't in terms of a family to Harry. So clearly they're always going to fill that role. So it would make sense that he would want to marry into that, Plus, Ginny's kind of cute. Ginny's kind of cute. I mean, it's not like she's,
Yeah, in the book, she's supposed to be, because, she plays, and we've seen in the movie, she plays Quidditch.
Yeah.
Which, going back to that, I know this is a total tangent, but how you said Ron, I always wondered why he never played Quidditch, because Ginny played, Fred played, George played, I was always like, well, okay, what's wrong with Ron?
You know what this is? You know what I was watching? See, this is when Landry joins the Dillon Panthers, or the East Dillon Lions. This is when Landry tries to play football on Friday Night Lights, and it works out to about the same level of success, which I thought was great. But yeah, I mean, I totally saw that, and you're a fan of that show too, so I knew you would get it. But I mean, that's exactly what I thought when I saw Ron here. I was like, Landry kicks a field goal, you go.
Yay!
And he didn't have to murder anybody.
What's his band name? This is a total tangent too. What's his band name? Crucifixious or something?
Crucifixious or something like that. Yeah, that's for the Friday Night Lights perspective.
Yeah, that's our 2 minutes on Friday Night Lights. But relating Harry Potter to Friday Night Lights.
Do you wonder if there's any crossover? I want to throw a dare out if there are any crossover Harry Potter Friday Night Lights fans besides you.
Oh, that's a good one.
Because you would think those would not be the same groups of people, but you know.
Yeah, we're trying to get a British boarding school that teaches witchcraft and wizardry, and combine it with East Texas football.
But the analogy works, right? I mean, it does work. It's the least expected person finally joins the team, and it's actually useful.
Yes, it does work. He is Landry, red hair and all.
Yeah, and he gets a girl out of it, you know, and it works. And it's the wrong girl for him. You know?
I know, because Landry's was gay. This one's crazy.
Landry's was also a hoe for Tim Riggins, but that's another story.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's another podcast for another day.
Yeah.
But I just always wondered why Ron never played, but they made, my whole point before that was in the book, Jenny's like supposed to be some little hottie. She's supposed to be, the athletic, and I'm sure she's also, she's more of a tomboy, but look, she had all brothers. She's the youngest of 6? Yeah, she's the youngest of 6 and has 5 brothers. And, so she's a tomboy. She's kind of spunky. She's the Quidditch player and stuff, so it's that's how she's described in the book, and I'm glad that because we haven't seen much of Jenny, except we saw her in the Order of the Phoenix and of course the Chamber of Secrets, but in most of the movies, Jenny, you talk about Malfoy or something, Jenny or Snape, Jenny hadn't had a whole lot to do, and now here she is.
She's always background dressing, but they make it a point to focus on her and bring her in, which is why something's coming, right?
Yeah.
And I'm with you on the whole tomboy bit. Like, I get that, and it kind of works, and that would make sense that Harry would be attracted to somebody like that, because what have we said about Harry from the get-go? He's the ultimate jock. That's what he's supposed to be in a lot of ways as a metaphor. So. And that makes sense that he would wind up with somebody equally
as athletic.
Yeah, equally as athletic as him and stuff. And I don't know how she, you say in the book she's described as maybe a little hotter. I get the way they're like, this girl, and I haven't seen her in the 7th films yet or what they do, but if they show her in adulthood, I'm sure they'll really doll her up and all that stuff. She looks like somebody that they play down her looks to make her a little more backgroundish and wallflowerish than she probably really would be. Like, they did that with Allison Hannigan on Buffy during the first season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And it's, by the 3rd season, they just let her be her. And, she's a really pretty woman, but if you play down her looks and sort of strip away the makeup and straighten her hair and all that, she looks like she's just a little wallflower, so she can play that. And I kind of like that. I mean, the actress that plays Ginny Weasley, Bonnie Wright has done a good job playing that role. It's another one of those kids that has kind of grown up with the role. And so, I liked that. I thought it was cool. And we've talked about the ending a lot, Anna, and how it all went down. I'm for the first time in a long time with this series, I'm actually interested in seeing what happens next. I feel like, I've said it before, I felt like there was payoff in this. And while this film necessarily wasn't perfect, it kept moving enough and has come to a point where I realize the next chapter's got to be good. It's almost by default you think it would be at least as good as this going forward, because they've just raised the stakes to an ultimate high. You just killed Harry's Obi-Wan Kenobi. You just killed his mentor, and now he's really pissed off. And he's got his two friends who are his best allies, who are actually useful in a fight, really pissed off too. And they're all, they're going out to wage war against the ultimate enemy, win or lose. And that, to me, is incredibly satisfying and makes me want to watch this more.
I agree. And this is one that I think can be watched over and over again. I really like this one. If I ranked my top so far, I haven't seen the part 2 yet, but if I ranked them, this would be in my top 3 probably. It'd be 2 or 3 probably.
Well, I guess we need to get to it. It's the part of the podcast where we give our popcorn rating. So, Anna, what is your official popcorn rating for Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince?
I will give this a large popcorn because I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. So I think that's been established. I'm a huge fan. I love the payoff in this movie. I love how they kind of incorporated everything from the book, but they condensed it just how it needed to be, and they didn't really leave anything out, and it flowed better and it moved quicker. And I love this. I like the story. I love the payoff. The actors are really coming into their own and, looking like young adults and stuff, and really doing a good job and owning the characters. So this is one that I could watch over and over again. So I give it a large popcorn.
This is definitely a step up from the 4th and the 5th entries by far. It's a very entertaining movie. I don't know that it's as standalone as maybe the 3rd one is,
No, this one's.
Yeah, you have to know all this other stuff. In particular, you got to know stuff from the 4th and the 5th one that you are not really easy to sit through for a fan that didn't read the books like me. Mm-hmm. But it's still very fun and it's very satisfying. And if you don't want to watch those and don't read the books, there's good detailed plot summaries out there. There's Wikipedia. There's your friends like Anna who know everything about it. They can get you filled in so you can just watch this one as it is. But I was satisfied with it. I liked it. I thought it was a well done story. I think they figured out exactly what works in this. They've got the writer in that knows how to adapt these, and they've got the same director now. It's the first time they've done that since Chris Columbus repeated as director, and I liked Yates's second attempt better than his first one by far. I mean, it was fantastic. And so this is large popcorn for me too, Anna. And that brings us now to the end of our series, because the next 2 podcasts, we're going to talk about Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and then Part 2. You and I haven't seen it yet. It's been out it's been out through the weekend as of the recording of this podcast and is doing huge numbers. I'm trying to stay completely spoiler free on it as much as I can. I know you've read the book. You know what happens. So it's going to be interesting to see if the momentum carries forward, if they really end with a bang. Like a lot of people promise that they will, or at least that it looks like they can do. So
all I have to say is, after reading that book, which was extremely long, they better. That's all I have. I haven't read any of the reviews or anything. And all I have to say is they better.
Well, we'll definitely see if they do. Folks, thanks again for joining us on our Harry Potter retrospective. You can download the other podcasts from this series from iTunes or from our website, continuousplaypodcast.com/movies, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter there. Leave us some feedback. Let us know what you think. Until next time, for Anna, I'm Jay. Thanks for tuning in to Film Strip.
Thank you for joining us in this chapter of Continuous Play's Harry Potter series retrospective. We will be reviewing each of the Harry Potter films this fall up until the release of the first part of the series finale, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Check out our website, www.continuousplaypodcast.com, each week for a new release in the series, and email feedback to us at mailbag@continuousplaypodcast.com.